Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Mind Your Mission, a podcast where we encourage Christian women to stay on track towards what God says is good in His Word. We're coming at you today. I am I'm like a week and a half postpartum. I had my baby on Sunday, November 9th, my sweet Haven, my daughter, which is super exciting. I can't believe that I have a son and a daughter. It's just crazy. But yeah, I am doing well. Baby's doing well. And Liz, how are you doing? You'll be 40 weeks on Friday. How you feeling?
I'm feeling good. Overall, I'm not super uncomfortable yet. I'm kind of feeling fine physically, like cramping, a little bit of discomfort, but nothing crazy. But I am ready for him to be out. And I think he might be evicted next week if my blood pressure has anything to say about it. So I'm hoping he comes by next week. That's like my hope and prayer. But obviously, things don't always go according to plan. Babies can sometimes want to stay in there pretty late. Because when did you get induced with Weston?
41 and 3.
So
So
yeah,
it was a bit longer.
that is pretty long.
That's why
So
I
I
was
don't think
surprised, like, 40
that
and
far.
4 felt early.
Yeah.
I was
That's
like,
like my
"Wow."
assumption. Like, I'm not surprised I haven't given birth yet. I was like, I know I would go over my due date, but now I'm like, I would like for him to come out now. I'm over it. But now I know what they mean. I'm so over it that I'm like not scared of giving birth.
Yeah.
I'm like, let's bring it on. It's fine.
Once you hit that point, it's coming.
Yeah. I'm like, let's just get things. But I'm feeling good overall. Everything, baby, looks good. We had to go to the hospital Monday night because my blood pressure was high at my appointment. So I had to go to the hospital and it went down eventually once I was like a little bit less stressed. Yeah, that was fun. I thought it was like, oh, we might have a baby now.
Yeah.
Thankfully, I got to go home. So I'm thankful for that. But I'm hoping he decides to exit soon.
Yeah.
So I don't
I'm
have to deal
hoping
with that again.
Yes. I'm hoping to just for natural onset of labor, and I was just telling you before we started rolling, but it's just crazy how the 2 weeks difference between our due dates never felt like that much, like, the whole entire pregnancy, and then now that I have my baby, I'm like, "Okay, Liz, like, I need you to have your baby because I wanna talk about your baby and my baby, like, and postpartum and everything," and so I'm ready for you to join me on the other side of giving birth. So, yeah, whenever he wants to come, I'm ready for him to come,
Me too. My
I'm sure
family's
you're ready
ready.
for him to come.
Yeah. Yeah, I
But
am.
I'll be praying that you can continue to have peace and trust that he'll come when he's ready. So,
Thank you.
yeah.
He'll be here probably next week. So
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah,
like,
one
either
way or
way.
another, he's
Yeah.
coming. So, yeah, well, we figured today, before I forget a lot of the details, figured I'd sit down and tell you my birth story. It's a great story, and I am excited to share it. But before I even begin to jump into it, I just wanted to say that I feel incredibly blessed to be able to tell it. Truthfully, since everything did go really well, it's been really tempting to credit my preparation and physical and mental strength. But I know that this isn't my story, it's God's story. And yes, I believe that preparation is valuable, that we can and should like do our part. But birth is one of those experiences that reminds you that ultimately we're not in control. And God designed the process and He writes the story. And I just wanted to say this very clearly, and I think Liz, especially with your labor approaching any day now, just please hear this clearly, that whether you give birth naturally, medicated, induced in a hospital, or C-section, like your story is beautiful because again, it's God's story. Your strength is not defined by the kind of birth that you have, but it's defined by the love and sacrifice that you carry as a mother. And having experienced both now, one birth that felt very traumatic and not the way that it's supposed to go, and then one that felt very deeply redemptive, I can say that honestly, God showed up and was glorified in both, though in very different ways. So, with that heart, just I hope that you hear my story and understand that's my perspective, like that's where I'm coming at it from. But I'll kind of take you back to my due date, which is the day that we filmed our last podcast. It was Wednesday the 5th, that was my due date. And after nap time that day, so like right after we filmed the podcast, actually, I felt a definite shift. I started feeling really crampy. I had felt like Braxton Hicks on and off a couple weeks before my due date, but that evening I was like especially crampy. And I remember thinking, like, okay, this could be it. Like, I spent the evening on the exercise ball. We went for a walk, and there was like this most beautiful pink sunrise. So I remember thinking, like, okay, that'd be cool. Like, pink for baby girl. I spent some time going up and down the stairs, like doing wild lunges that night. And things just never fell into a pattern that night. But I could tell that my body was preparing. And this pregnancy, I recognized the contractions and the lightning crotch, like the sharp sudden pains as baby's dropping lower, which I never experienced with my first. And one of the craziest and most freeing parts of this birth was that I never had a single cervical check in pregnancy or in labor. I just trusted, and my midwives just trusted that my body knew what to do and was going to do it in its own timing. And there was so much peace in that. But in those days and weeks leading up to giving birth, like usually you're getting checked at the doctor, but it was cool to just like feel what I was feeling, think that I could be dilating, but like never worry about it necessarily. So after my due date on Wednesday, over the next couple days, I noticed that my mucus plug started coming out, which is another sign of progression. I, on my due date, had gone to Whole Foods and gotten evening primrose oil, which again, not one thing that you do is going to like make you go into labor, but I did notice that my mucus plugs started coming out right when I started taking the evening primrose oil, which that's supposed to soften things down there. So, it didn't hurt. So I let my doula know, but held it loosely because I know losing your mucus plug could mean like hours, days, or nothing at all before labor starts. So
It was right after your due date, you said you started losing it?
yeah, Thursday and Friday is when I like it wasn't like a one big chunk, but it was just definitely like a few pieces, if you can even call them pieces. But yeah, it was just more mucus than I had had. So that's what I noticed. And then those next few days, so like Thursday, Friday, and then early Saturday, there were just like little God winks, like small signs that I had prayed for. Like I'd prayed, like, Lord, give me some indication that labor is close. And looking back, I think that He did that. Like my weight plateaued at the end, like those last couple weeks, which like I know that that happens often right before labor, just because you're peeing a lot for one. You're like constantly peeing because there's so much pressure down there, but also your body's just like not losing fluid, but your fluid is just kind of like plateaued. I finished like every item on my nesting to-do list literally the day before I gave birth, like Saturday. Like even the silly things like I don't know, like wanting certain towels to be the ones that were washed in our rotation and like making sure the sheets were clean. Nolan happened to have a bloody nose the night before. And so we had washed our sheets. And like, not that it matters that you have clean sheets, but it's like, it's nice postpartum to know I literally just washed my sheets.
Yeah, I just washed mine yesterday, and I was like, "Great day for you to come, James."
Yeah. So like, there's like little things like that. I had finished the last of my date balls that night and I was like, shoot, like, do I make more? Like, I don't like eating them plain. So I'm like, do I make more or do I just kind of like stop eating dates? Like everything, even like my coconut oil that I'd been using on my belly, I had ran out in my little container. Like little things just seem to be winding down at exactly the right time. And those things might seem small, but again, I had prayed just that God would give me like little indications that labor was near and like I wouldn't have read into them like, before, I wouldn't have been like, "Okay, like, I'm out of my coconut oil. I'm gonna go into labor tomorrow." But, like, looking back, I can see, like, God's hand in it, which is kinda cool. So, on Saturday evening, the 8th, we went for a walk, and we played at a park, which we had been doing pretty much every day, and I noticed mild contractions, which I had every day leading up to that. But at dinner, while I was cooking and cleaning, and then specifically when I was reading to Weston before bed that night, I noticed that they were becoming consistent in a sense. I looked at my watch and realized, like, okay, like maybe 10 minutes ago, maybe 15 minutes ago, like they're kind of having some consistency. And it's funny because I have that moment on video and you can see it in my face. I just posted a reel about it. So go to our Instagram and like see that reel. But my face, I like look at my watch. I'm reading to Weston and I have this on video because I was trying to get a video of him like naming all the Bible characters that he knows in his little Bible book, which I didn't get the video because he was being stubborn that night. But I got my face on video of like realizing like, I could actually be in labor. So that's kind of funny. But it was also cool because since I had that realization right before bedtime, I did get to like hug him a little tighter that night, just knowing that it could be the last bedtime that I tucked him in as my only child. That was definitely emotional and sacred and on par with all the reels that you see on Instagram. Like I know a lot of parents like, do you take a video that night before they suspect they're in labor? And it's truly that emotional. Whether it's just because I'm hormonal or not, I don't know. But yeah, it was a very special moment. So anyway, since everything on my to-do list was done that night, Nolan and I actually got into bed early and watched the documentary, The Business of Being Born. I don't know if you've seen it, Liz, but it's just all about the business that is hospital birth and, like, what it's become, so very encouraging, like, and empowering. I felt fired up, like, going into having a home birth, like, watching that the night before, but I was definitely having contractions throughout the movie, and I had Nolan text his mom that I was feeling something, like, he literally wrote, "Erin's feeling something," which to his mom, like, "I'm sorry, I felt bad." I'm like, that doesn't tell you anything." But the reason he texted her was because she was gonna be coming up when I did go into labor to be there with Weston, so he wanted to, like, give her a feel, like, "Don't come now, but, like, maybe in the morning, you might have to wake up early," sort of thing. So I knew just based on what I had researched and read that the best thing to do was just to go to bed. Like, I didn't start timing them, like, they weren't consistent enough to time at that point, but I was like, "We're just gonna go to bed." I was kind of in denial about it. I'm like, "I'm just gonna ignore it as long as possible." So I slept on and off that night, waking almost every hour with contractions and a lot of trips to the bathroom. At first, when I had to go to the bathroom so much, like, number 2, I wondered if I had food poisoning because I had actually eaten, like, a deli sandwich that day, which you're not uh, supposed to eat, like, deli meat when you're pregnant. I was like, "Oh, shoot, like, do I have do I have food poisoning or something?" But then I also remembered that since prostaglandins soften not just the cervix, but everything else too, this could just be my body, like, clearing and making space for birth, and so it made sense that I was pooping so much and, like, it's just another, like, hint that God truly designs every part with purpose, even the pooping parts. So, around 4:30 AM, I couldn't sleep through them anymore, so I got up to start timing them and see what it would do when I leaned into gravity. Overnight, also, like, didn't necessarily I felt kinda weird. I'm like, "Do I call my midwives? Do I not?" Like, I didn't know exactly when to call, and so I was, like, spending more time laying down, like, as much time laying down as I could because I knew that when I got up, then gravity would start, like, making things happen quicker, and so I'm like, "Okay, I'll wait till, like, a not horrible hour of the night to get up and start timing them," which who knows if that actually postponed things or if that's just, like, in my brain it did. But when I got up at 4:30 and like, intentionally started swaying and doing some movements that I knew would help. My contractions were about 5 minutes apart and lasting about a minute, which is that 5-1-1 rule that they will tell you, especially as a first-time mom, to go to the hospital. So that's when I called my doula. The app was telling me, like, "Go to the hospital." I'm like, "Okay, that's what means when I know to call my doula and my midwife." So I called them, and they got into motion at least. They were both about an hour out, so they were aware and got on the road pretty quickly, and then that's when Nolan got up and he started prepping the house and he got his mom on the road too. So at that point, I felt very calm, peaceful, excited, and I was just thankful to have gone into labor naturally. Like, it was kinda surreal that my body actually did what it was supposed to do after, like, the first time. Not that it didn't do what it was supposed to do the first time, but you can kinda, like, have that feeling that you're like, "Oh," like, a little worried, but this time it was cool to, like, know that my body's capable of doing that. Just before 7 AM is when my midwife arrived. At this point, like, I was on all fours is where I spent a lot of time laboring. That's just what felt the best to me, and I guess, like, opened my pelvis and allowed things to come, but also gave me, like, some sort of relief. And I couldn't talk through them at this point. Like, when she got there, I couldn't talk through them, and I was kinda starting to make a little bit of noise, like, I was focusing on my breathing, and then when she got there is when I started, like, kind of a deep groan through them, and I was planning to get in the shower and then get out and then get in the tub, like, kinda break it up that way. But when she got there and I told her my plan, like, to get in the shower, she's like, I think that you should actually go ahead and fill up the pool now. She's like, "I don't think you wanna waste any hot water. I think that we should go ahead and fill up the pool now." We had previously discussed, like, waiting to get into the pool until I was relatively close to pushing, and so when she recommended this, I was like, "Wait, like, are we already at that point?" And I was a little, like, hesitant, but I ended up just trusting her, and I'm glad I did, because labor was intensifying, but I did feel very supported, never felt pressured, and while they filled up the pool, I labored on the toilet a bit, and that's when my doula got there, and she started hip squeezes, which offered, like, so much relief, and I wanted to just pause and give props to my doula because She was amazing. I knew specifically that I wanted a Christian doula for this birth just to remind me to rely on God's strength and to fully surrender, but she did, like, way more than just that. She was there for, like, the mental aspect, but she also, like, did the most when it comes to, like, the physical effort she put in. Like, she was squeezing my hips so hard for so long, and so, well, not so long, but, like, a good amount of time, like, I'm sure she was sore after, so I am just thankful for that, and I'm actually hoping to have her on the podcast at some point to share a bit about, like, what a doula is and what they do and just her passion for natural birth, so stay tuned. I'm hoping that that works out, but anyways, around 8 AM, I'd say I got off the toilet, which I feel like I made a lot of progress on the toilet,
I've heard
and
that. The
moved
toilet
to
is
the
like
pool.
the
Dilation
way they call
station.
it, yeah, dilation station.
When I was on the toilet, maybe, like, shortly after, I did start using the combs too. That I didn't use my first birth. Once I grabbed on, I didn't let go. So, like, I would say it was very helpful. I didn't experience what it would have been like to, like, let them go after that, but, like, I grabbed them and just, like, held on. So, highly recommend having those as a tool. When I got into the pool, it was a very welcomed sense of relief. It was a bit harder to position myself as easily in the pool just because I'm a long person and the pool's only so big, but the feeling that I felt of relief, like, was much better than not being able to move. Like, it was still way worth it to be in the pool. When I got in the water, contractions changed a bit, and I don't think it was because water slowed things down at all, because contractions, some actually got longer and deeper and felt, like, really purposeful, and then others were shorter, but Emily, my doula, was reminding me this whole time of the physical process after each contraction, so she was saying things like, "Your baby is shifting into position and working your way down," and tying what was physically going on, like the stage, I guess, that I was at in labor, likely, even though she didn't know exactly because there was no checks. That was really helpful, tying that to what I was feeling. It just helped me welcome in the contraction instead of, like, resist and fear them. And so they were here, but they actually, like, stayed downstairs until they they based a lot of it off of the noises that I was making, which sounds kinda weird and, like, I don't know, not reliable, but for me at least, like, the noises that I was making were very on par with where I was at in labor, and they were specifically waiting to hear for the pushing noise, when you start pushing, likely there will be noises coming out of your mouth, and they will clearly indicate that you're, like, pushing, and so they stay downstairs just to let the natural process happen, to give me my space, to let me work with Nola and my doula through those contractions, and then they came up. Let's see, I they came up to check the water level and the temperature of the water in the pool, and they ended up filling it up a little bit more, so when they did that, I tried to get out and go back to the toilet and go to the bathroom one more time, but as soon as I got back to the toilet, then I started, like, pushing, and feeling that urge to push, and they could hear it in my voice, and so they're like, "Okay, we gotta get you back in the pool." And I was in disbelief, like, I couldn't called them at 5:30, got in the pool at 8, and then this is, like, a few minutes later, like, 8:30, a few minutes, like, half an hour later, like, I was in the pool for less than an hour because I gave birth at 8:57. So, I couldn't believe it when I moved back into the pool that, like, I was actually feeling that urge to push, and that feeling is so wild. It's the fetal ejection reflex, and it's a real, like, physiologic response during the end of labor, and it's just this powerful, involuntary urge to push when the baby's head descends and stretches the pelvic floor nerves, and this sensation to me felt very similar to the urge to poop because it's the same nerves and pelvic floor muscles that are involved in pooping, but the muscles that control both the back hole and the birth canal are influenced by the parasympathetic nervous system, which manages involuntary body functions. So these muscles tend to work best when they feel safe. Like, somebody at one point called them shy muscles because they work best when they feel safe, unobserved, and relaxed, and that's why intense monitoring or, like, the interruption of a hospital setting can, like, hinder the natural reflex, and these muscles, they just respond to stress by tightening instead of releasing when you really need them to release. So imagine trying to poop, like, in the middle of a room full of people telling you to poop, like, under bright lights. It doesn't really work that way, and pushing out a baby is the same way. So being allowed to follow my body's cues at this point and just be safe in a calm environment was awesome, and I think is why things happened as quickly as they did, and everyone around me, like, they were just reminding me, like, "Trust your body," and Nolan and Emily were reminding me, "Trust God," and that's just what I did. So, I started pushing, and my water hadn't broke yet. M In about my, like, 2nd pushing contraction, I felt, like, this clear pop feeling, which is exactly what I prayed for. I had prayed specifically that my water stay intact until the end just to give me as much cushion and comfort as possible. That prayer was answered, and that pop, I would say people say that it kind of like, you can imagine a rubber band snapping, and that's exactly what it felt like. It was like this clear pop. I was curious, like, being in the water, if I would be able to feel my water break, but yeah, like, I clearly felt it clear pop, like a rubber band snapping. Um, and then after that, with just a few pushing contractions, I reached down with my hand and I could feel her head, which is this like super grounding, surreal feeling that reminded me like, okay, like this is really happening. She's really there. Cause it's easy to feel like, is my actually doing anything helpful? Like, is this push actually doing anything? But like to feel her head was so surreal, and she had a ton of hair, so that was also surreal. Didn't expect that, and I also wanted to feel because I wanted to slow down, breathe, wait for my body's cues, and I wanted to avoid tearing, and so feeling down there helped me, like, physically feel like, "Okay, is this too much? Like, let me just slow down a little bit and just go with my body's contractions," and I'll talk about this more in a minute, but slowing down and letting the contraction timing and letting like, enjoying the rest versus forcing her out was so cool too, like, in a hospital, once they see the head, they're, like, telling me to push, and it's like it was nice to have the breaks to where, like, I could push and then I could rest for a minute and they're not, like, yelling at me, and then what was crazy too is that with one contraction, her head came out, and then it wasn't like a, "Okay, keep pushing, like, get the rest of the body out." It's like, "Okay, we'll chill for a minute, her head's out," but with the next contraction, I pushed the rest of her body out, and she came out. I was on all fours, and she came out behind me, and so the midwives had grabbed her, and then they pushed her through my legs because my umbilical cord was pretty short, so I pushed her back through my legs, I grabbed her and brought her right up to my chest, and it was done, like, absolutely incredible. She was so small, which I was not expecting, like, because Weston was so big, like, so she felt so small in my arms, and she had dark hair, which is another thing that I didn't expect, but I thought I had blonde hair when I was born, apparently I had dark hair too, so I, like, look back at pictures and I'm like, for some reason I thought I had blonde hair because I did
Yeah.
when I was a toddler, but
I think every baby comes out with, like, dark hair, like, I came out with very dark
yeah,
hair.
yeah, which I didn't realize, so I was like, "Wow, you have so much hair and you're so tiny," is, like, my first thoughts, and then I was just, like in that moment, I was so on a high, like, wow, like, just thank you, thank you, thank you. I was just so grateful for my birth team at that moment and just immensely grateful for the experience that I felt like they gave me. I was just so blown away that it was, for lack of better words, easy. And my sister had asked me, like, a day after if the contractions I felt on Pitocin with Weston were different than these ones that I had, like, naturally, because that's what you hear a lot of times is that Pitocin makes contractions worse.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna ask.
And what I would say is that the feeling, like, the pain is the same. Like, there was like, contractions were still super intense and not an enjoyable feeling, but the difference was the timing between them. Like, the time that I had between each one was so on par with the intensity of each one. Like, when one was longer and more intense, I had a longer break, and then when one was
Yeah,
shorter, they came faster. Like, Pitocin brings contractions at a rate that isn't necessarily compatible with where your baby is in the pelvis, and it's not necessarily giving you the appropriate rest time that your body needs. And with Weston, that lack of rest time is the thing that drove me over the edge mentally, and
yeah.
this time, it was so much easier to keep my mind under control and really not have any fear. Like, I never felt like it was too much for me to handle this time, which I thought for sure I'd get to that point, but, like, I knew that it was happening just the way that it was supposed to, that God was the one bringing each wave and that he was going to, in his timing, still the storm and, like, bring me to my desired haven, which is her name. Her name is Haven. And I kinda teased it when I talked about Psalm 107 in our last episode, but we had this name picked out with Weston because we didn't know if he was a boy or a girl before the birth, and so we had 2 names picked out, and Weston and Weston and Haven, and when we got pregnant with Weston, we were both still assigned to cutters. And so in verse 23 and 24 of Psalm 107, when it says, "Some went down to the sea in ships, doing business on the great waters. They saw the deeds of the Lord, his wondrous works in the deep." It felt very applicable because we were both, like, physically out on ships in the sea. And then that psalm goes on to say, "For he commanded and raised the stormy wind, which lifted up the waves of the sea. They mounted up to heaven, they went down to the depths, their courage melted away in their evil plight. They reeled and staggered like drunken men and were at their wits' end," which is basically how labor goes. Like, God brings the waves, and at some point you get to, like, your wit's end, which is that peak right before you start pushing. But then as it continues in verse 27, "You cry to the Lord in your trouble, and he delivers you from your distress. He makes the storm be still and the waves of the sea hush. And then they were glad and the waters were quiet, and he brought them to their desired haven." And so I love that psalm as a life verse, but specifically for a labor verse, it's a verse that is specifically also super meaningful to Nolan and I's story, the story that God wrote. Also, the definition of a haven is a place of safety or refuge, which was also meaningful considering we did choose to have a home birth. It's just cool that she was born in our safe place in our bedroom. And then also, I just wanted to throw this disclaimer out there for those of you who follow Sadie Robertson. I
We
swear to
had it
you,
before that.
I swear to you, ask my friends, all my friends. I had this name picked out before she named her daughter Haven. And I remember driving, listening to the episode of her podcast where she announced this name, and she goes, "It starts with an H and ends with an N." And I go, "No, like, no way. Like, no, no way. Like, you stole the name from me," but not that I care. Like, I just so we're clear, didn't steal the name from Sadie Robertson. I had this name picked out before. I just think it's hilarious. And I love that both of our daughters are named Haven. But anyways, after she was born, we moved to the bed pretty quick to birth the placenta just so that they could monitor my bleeding easier and check for tearing, which I didn't tear. Like, that was such an answered prayer after, like, a 3.5 degree tear last time, and she was on my chest the entire time that they were checking me. She was latched and still attached to her placenta. Nolan cut the cord of the placenta probably about an hour after she was born, after it had turned white, which is another part of my birth plan, was to do the delayed cord clamping. And then after about 2 full hours of skin to skin, I'd say, like, she latched right away, and it was amazing, like, knowing what breastfeeding's supposed to feel like this time around. It was, like, much easier for me, like, and she still had to learn, but she was very quick to learn, and I was able to show her versus with the first, you just don't know what that's like. But after 2 hours of skin to skin, Nolan took her and did some skin to skin while I showered. It's just so nice to be in your own space, like, to take your own shower and to put your own clothes on, like, that was great. And then they did her newborn checks, like her weight and her height and everything. So she was 7 pounds, 8 ounces, which is a very average size baby, but to me, I was shocked that she was so small since Weston was 9'7". I thought for sure she'd at least be 8 pounds, but no, 7, 8, but she's long. She's still like 21.5 inches, which I think Weston was 22, so she's tall, which makes sense. Her feet are really long, which is again makes sense just because 'cause I'm so long. But yeah, I look back and I see God's goodness all over this birth, all the things that I prayed for, my water staying intact until the very end, no tearing, the timing working out well for Weston. He woke up around 7:30, so the midwives had already gotten there and set up everything, like, he slept in that day, which was pretty cool, and then when he woke up, I got to give him a big hug, and then he went and had fun with some family friends that are nearby until Nolan's mom got here. So the timing worked out great for him. He was never, like, scared or, like, we never questioned what we were gonna do with him, like, that was easy, and then I also had prayed that my care team would be exactly who needed to be there. This is just because, like, the midwives there's 3 of them, and, like, 2 of them were gonna be at my birth, and I didn't know which 2, like, it depended on the day. So that just felt like the 2 people that were there felt very right, not that the 3rd wouldn't have been right, but it just everything felt very natural and fell right into place. And then I just had prayed for an overwhelming peace through it all, and that I wouldn't fear and that I would get an opportunity to understand what people mean when they say they truly enjoyed the experience of childbirth. I would not have said that after the first time, but this time, because God designed the process, because He designed me, and because He designed Haven, like, my labor didn't need to be controlled, only supported, and I got to experience in God's sovereignty um, the natural process, and it's God's story, like I said, and I don't want to ever stop telling it. And I wanted to say too, And Liz and I have talked about this a little bit, but I think I've decided to I know I've decided to post a labor vlog on YouTube, so that'll be up on Friday, and it'll show the whole process that I'm talking about, and never in a million years, especially, like, when I started doing YouTube, like, way back in the day, I never in a million years thought I'd be sharing a video like that for a few reasons. One, I used to watch home birth videos and think like, "Wow, that's incredible, but I could never do that." And then also, I didn't think that I'd be comfortable sharing an experience online that's so intimate and vulnerable. But the reason that I decided to share it was because God, I feel like I've said over and over, I feel like this is his story, and I want people to experience his goodness through the video. And I've just been so encouraged by watching other people's videos, and I'm praying that mine can do the same for other people. And I tried to edit it in a way that like is still very modest and doesn't show anything that I would want my father-in-law or my dad, or I'm thinking of like Haven's future husband. Like I wanted to make a video that like
Friends.
yeah, that, like, she would be okay, like, having out there too, that just, like, shows the beauty of it and not anything that isn't, isn't worth sharing. So, I that will be out on Friday, and I just think that because of the work of Jesus Christ on the cross, we get to live without fear. He designed our bodies so intentionally and, like, through his grace. Like I said, I got to experience the natural process of childbirth and the power of relying on him completely for our strength. So, anyways, it was amazing, and I felt like superwoman after I gave birth, which I've already in a week learned so much about humility, through postpartum, which I will definitely share once, Liz, you have your baby and join me in the postpartum season. I'm sure we'll talk about postpartum, but yeah, thank you for listening to my story. I hope it was encouraging.
It's just crazy how quickly that it
Yeah,
happened.
yeah, and I didn't it's kind of I asked the midwife sis, I'm like, "How do you know when to, like how do you know when your labor starts?" is the question I asked, like, how do people gauge, like, when to start counting? Because really, I knew I was in labor the night before, but I don't they say, like, when it hits that 511, like, like, for sure that they're consistent, which from 4:30 to she was born right before 9, like, 4.5 hours, like, I know that they say that with first-time moms, like, that it goes quick, and I feel like 4.5 hours is a good time where, like, it wasn't too fast that I felt stressed about, like, getting the midwives there, but, like, there was just never time to be afraid.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And it's cool to see how God redeemed your first birth to
yeah.
this one.
I think I'm thankful to have experienced it both ways just because I feel like I can relate to multiple experiences. And again, I just there's a chapter in, Risen Motherhood that talks about just how we as women, either take a lot of pride in our birth stories or, like, kinda laugh about them and say like, bring humor to them if they didn't go the way that we want to, and I think it's cool to have experienced it both and know that God can show up and redeem the things that need redeeming and that he can provide in a different way if things go really well. So it's just either way, I wanted God to be glorified. So I'm hoping that this telling a story does that, and I felt like he was right there through it all in both circumstances. I think it's cool moving forward and thinking about, like, having more kids in the future, like, having both experiences. It's not like I'm guaranteed a perfect birth next time because this one went so well, and just a reminder that we just have to trust him, and as you're waiting to figure out what your birth story is gonna be like,
Yeah.
we don't get to know, we can hope and pray and prepare as much as we can, but we just have to ultimately trust that either way, in whatever circumstances end up happening, you want God to get the glory, and you just wanna experience and be closer to him through it.
Yeah, because there's so many things that can, at the end,
Yeah.
go
Yeah.
wrong, and you can't control it
No.
necessarily, like,
No.
it's how your body deals with
Mhm. Mhm.
birth, so I know you can't control everything, but it's cool to hear the stories where everything does go right, and I enjoy hearing the ones where everything doesn't go right either, because it's everyone's individual story, and I feel like everyone learns something through it. So, it's good to be prepared for all
Yes,
type.
and I will say, I think listening to birth stories, both, like, quote, unquote, "bad ones," to prepare you in case things don't go well, but also to listen to a lot of really good stories that do go well. I think that was super helpful. Like, the Ina May's Guide to Childbirth has so many birth stories, and I had read them. That's another thing. I finished my book the day before I went into labor. I just realized that. But yeah, listening to birth stories is, I think, so crucial and important before you give birth, because even if women don't necessarily claim it as God's story, like if they're not Christians, we know that since God is the author of life, that they all are his intentional story. And so it's cool, I think, to read and to hear about the different ways it can go. And so that you are kind of open handed about it and ready for whatever God wants to throw your way. All right. Well, thank you all for listening to my story. I hope that it was encouraging to you. And we'd love if you guys would follow or subscribe, depending on what platform you're listening to this podcast on, so that you can soon hear Liz's birth story. Who knows when that'll be? We're both
Yeah.
like just like taking this day by day as far as podcast and postpartum and everything goes, but so that you can hear her birth story and that we can continue to walk throughout our postpartum journeys, newborn life, and our mom lives with you guys. We're thankful that you have listened and tuned in. And if you have any questions about anything, especially home birth stuff, like I'm on cloud nine, like talking about home birth. I don't want to push it on anybody, but like 10 out of 10 recommend. And I feel like there's certain people that you would expect to have home birth. Like, tell me if I'm wrong. I feel like I'm becoming the person that like you would expect to have home birth, but like when you like look at who I am, like military officer, like has great insurance, like surely I should just give birth in the hospital because it's all paid for. Like I feel like I surprised myself, honestly, that I did this. So
Mhm.
if you're
And that
surprised,
wasn't planned the whole time, it was at the
no,
very end that
nope,
you decided to.
nope. So if you're 30 weeks pregnant and you're like, "Oh, is it too late?" It's not too late. You can still switch.
Too late for me,
Yeah,
but
it
I was
might be
like,
too late for
"Nah," I
you.
think because of my blood pressure anyway, but
But anyway, if you have
better
any
to
questions, I'd love to answer them and like get on my soapbox and talk to you about home birth because I've learned so much throughout the process too. So with that, this has been Erin and Liz helping you mind your mission.